How you doing, everybody? Vasi Vada Party, Casey Freelove, Charlie O here. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, March 5th, 2021. A very interesting Friday as we get going here at college basketball. Some of the conferences have had their tournaments going. A couple of games have already gone off today. The ACC, SEC, Pac-12, everything will be all set up as we get into conference tournaments next week. The NBA will have their All-Star game this weekend. We'll get to the NBA games from last night. So some interesting games last night in the NBA, guys. Charlie, Casey, how are you both? We're powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Download the MTMAR app. Download the Viget app. Use the MTMR promo code. Get in there with all the conversation and action that you have against us as well, too. All right, we're on Facebook Live. We're on Stables Media Facebook page. We're on Stables Media YouTube page. If you miss any of the live broadcasts, you can download, subscribe on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, and anywhere you download your subscription. Sorry about that, Charlie. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's Friday. All is good.
Good. Casey, what's going on in your world today as we hit the weekend?
Well, I'm rapidly Googling NBA All-Star total, and I don't see a number yet. I'm wondering if that's going to be it. You know, at this point, you might as well set it over under 310. I mean, because they're not going to play any defense. And I'm wondering, nobody's going to want to be there anyway. These players have said, we don't want to go play an all-star game. I think the happiest guys in the NBA, Vasu, by the way, I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking. Have to be the guys that didn't get selected that are good players. Maybe not top tier, but good. You're like, oh, I get 8 days to sit on my butt and recoup after this COVID nonsense season that we're in. They got to be feeling good. And, you know, one thing we'll talk about in the second half, then we'll get going here. The teams that had that, almost all-star level players that are well rested, and they're going to come out of the chutes hot in the second half.
No doubt about it. The one thing about the All-Star game is, and I think that they didn't want it at first, but you haven't heard very many complaints in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I think Commissioner Silver and I think the executives probably got to somebody and said, hey, we owe the league a lot of money, or we're getting this money from the television contract. It's clearly a television grab for this, because otherwise why would they have the event? There's no doubt about it. I know Steph Curry's going in on Saturday night, as are most players. They're going to stay in their hotel rooms. They're going to quarantine in their hotel rooms to go play a game, and then the dunk competition will be at halftime. That's my understanding. The 3-point competition will be before the game. Is that right? I don't even know the format. I'm so disinterested in the whole thing, so it doesn't even really matter to me. But you know what? When it comes to the TV money, that's what they're doing, and they're in Atlanta, so good for them. The Warriors did not play with Steph Curry last night or Draymond Green. Remember, this was for wagering purposes as well, too. This was a makeup game from the January 28th game that they were going to reschedule to like February 18th or something like that. And then yesterday it came up. So this was a day off. This was going to be an extra day off for Curry and all those players that ended up having to play. There were 2 write-in games yesterday. I think the Knicks and Pistons were the other write-in game, and then the Warriors and the Phoenix Suns. As you see in the bottom of our screen here, feel free to jump in on Facebook or anywhere that you get us and send us some comments about what you think about the NBA or college basketball. We're 9 days away from Selection Sunday as well. But let's start with the NBA real quick. Portland got a 4-point victory over Sacramento after beating the Warriors 2 nights in a row. So they had a back-to-back, by the way. Portland minus 4.5. I had them. So thanks to De'Aaron Fox for all of a sudden hitting 3-pointers at the end. 123-119 over Sacramento. Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic. How about him as an MVP candidate? We talked about Joel Embiid yesterday. They go into Indiana. Indiana, not an easy place to go in and play, and they beat them by 10. I know Indianapolis is having a tough time without T.J. Warren, and some of their defense has been lacking a little bit as well, too. These are just some of the games. These aren't every one of the games. Milwaukee's still struggling, 112-111 at Memphis is a 6-point favorite. Don't know what to make of that. Giannis, the first pick overall in the All-Star draft by LeBron. So we'll see. Is he on LeBron's team? Yeah, he's on LeBron's team. So in case you're hearing clicking sound, I just wanted to say this. The clicking sound is coming from the typing. I think if we type ourselves, we're just getting used to the StreamYard folks for everybody. So I think that's just basically kind of if we mute ourselves when we type in stuff, then I think that'll be the best way to go. So that's just kind of a little inside producing right here. Casey will come back as we get to it. So as we get to the NBA, Charlie, the Phoenix Suns, again, no Curry, no Green last night. The line went up from 6.5 to 13. I mean, you could see what was coming in that game. And if they even put a line, I can't even believe they put a line in that game, honestly, based on how it went. The total stayed under. I was surprised the total went to 220. Sure enough, it got close to it for my under taste, but I did stay on the under. So 120-98. Phoenix and then Boston an 8-point favorite over Toronto, 132 to 125 over Toronto. They don't cover. So what's your take from the NBA last night, Charlie?
Everybody wanted to get out of there and go to the break. I mean, it was really obvious with that Suns Warriors game last night. And I'm with you. I'm surprised they kept that game up on the board. I mean, no Draymond, no Curry, no Oubre. I mean, was there? I mean, other than the total where it did finish the way it did, there wasn't much to decide in that game. So that really wasn't much of a challenge. I was interested in that Bucks Grizzlies game. You know, the Grizzlies were up there in that game, and the Bucks came back, and Drew Holiday, that corner shot that he sank to give them the lead, that was pretty. The Grizzlies came back, had a chance with a couple of seconds left to potentially win the game. They had a three-pointer that went up and banged off the iron, but Milwaukee had to really battle in that game to win it. But they're happy to have Holiday back into the lineup, and I think that will help them in the second half. So that was an entertaining game. The Nuggets looking like the Nuggets. They played well. The Joker coming up just 2 assists short of a triple-double, and the Nuggets last night played defense. So I know Michael Malone very happy to see his team play defense last night. So that was just a couple of my takeaways from last night. It was a night where early games were competitive, late games were, come on, let's go to the break.
Casey, what about the NBA last night in terms of Boston? Danny Ainge has said they're going to improve that roster, and now the word has come out that Blake Griffin has been released out of his contract out of Detroit. I'm not sure how helpful it'll be to anybody if it doesn't go inside anymore. And I just don't understand where a team, even like Portland, I heard Portland was interested in Blake Griffin. I don't know what they would do with him. He's just another outside shooter for them. You just got to think that Blake Griffin is another name out there. I know they're throwing names out there and they're buying contracts out. I would go after Andre Drummond before I go after Blake Griffin.
I agree with that statement. I would go after Andre Drummond first as well. I'm looking at Mark Stein's Twitter account. He's got the Lakers, Clippers, Nets, Heat, and Warriors among teams that have expressed interest in getting Mr. Griffin. And look, this isn't the Blake Griffin that played with the LA Clippers. I think his career kind of went to die in Detroit because nobody talked about it. Blake Griffin got more run as a stand-up comic while he was in Detroit than he did as an NBA player. I actually like Blake Griffin quite a bit going back to his days in Oklahoma. As far as destinations for him, then we'll talk about last night. Just watching a little of that Warriors game, I thought, look, Steve Kerr can still coach him up. The Warriors are going to be without Klay Thompson for the whole year. Who knows as far as Weissman and his injuries towards the future. And I know Griffin's kind of a hybrid as far as where you put him, but maybe he could be a good addition to the Warriors, a team that still has playoff aspirations. That wouldn't shock me, at least, if that's the team he ends up on. I think if he had his way, he'd probably say, ship me to Brooklyn. I love New York. I'd like to play for the Nets alongside the Big Three. And I don't know that would necessarily make them a Big Four. But he's still got some talent in the tank. And if you can bring him off the bench, he can log you minutes, get some rebounds, and put up shots. He's always been a decent ball distributor for his size. And put it this way, if I'm in San Francisco and they say he's coming west, I'd be pretty pleased with that overall. As far as the Suns, they just picked up where we talked about yesterday, Vasu. 120-98, taking care of business. Cameron Payne with the big game. We discussed on this show, and then I went and had a conversation with one of my work buddies. It's the surrounding pieces, too. It's not just Chris Paul and DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker that are getting it done. This team is playing very good team basketball and also ferocious on the defensive end. It's kind of funny whenever you see a score that isn't in the triple digits, Vasu, these days in the NBA, you kind of go, well, what the hell went wrong for that team last night? They couldn't even get to 100. It's such a far cry from even 10 years ago when you and I would be handicapping had we known each other then and pretty much jumping on every under available on the board. So for the gambler side of it, it's made it a little more difficult. But Phoenix does end the first half as one of the best teams against the spread. I think they're number 3 in the league against the number. And that's something you want to keep an eye on when we move into the second half.
Vasu Vadaparty, Casey Freelove, Charlie O. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, March 5th, powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Download the Viget app and use the MTMR promo code. All right, not a lot to talk about the NBA. I'm really not that interested in the All-Star game this weekend. They had their draft, and I guess the TNT did is doing their docuseries, which I haven't seen part 1 yet. I'm sure NBA TV will replay it, but they're doing 4 parts for each of the guys over the years, and I think that might be interesting to see, but it's not exactly going to be hard-hitting journalism. TNT has produced a show about themselves, so the 3 of us could do that. What would our show be, Casey?
Well, And they're busy promoting Shaquille O'Neal and his wrestling matches on Inside the NBA more than analyzing the game at some points. And I got to say, I may be losing touch and getting older, but I haven't watched wrestling since I was about 12 years old. So good luck to Shaq with that endeavor.
Yeah, Charlie, it's going to be an interesting. I think they're going to be talking a lot more about the backstories than they are about the game on Sunday. TNT has the game, right, on Sunday, I believe?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so yeah, this is all going to be.
I heard everything about the special that I needed to know when Shaq last night said that one of the things that he did is he went to meet Ted Turner, and Ted Turner looked at him and said, "Now, who are you again?" and Shaq said, "Well, Mr. Turner, I've worked for you for 30 years."
Yeah, no kidding.
And I said, "That's it. I'm out."
Yeah. What do we think about the All-Star game? Did you guys watch? Did you guys see the highlights of the draft, I guess to call it, or whatever? It was all show. It was all staged for show. And I get it. You got to do it for TV. And I just think this year would have been, we all agree that it would have been a year not to have the All-Star game, because the All-Star game is for the festivities. It's not so much for the game. And those totals are going to be at 300. I guess if I'm going to watch the All-Star game, Casey and Charlie, and then we'll jump off the NBA, unless you have some other stuff to talk about at the end. The other part is when it gets to the third quarter and the fourth quarter, when it gets interesting, when they add 24 points to the winning team, and then the first one to get to that score will be the winner. So you'll have to play some defense in the fourth quarter. So that's kind of, well, that is going to be the only interesting part about the All-Star game, Casey.
Look, I've attended an All-Star game back when I lived in Vegas in 2007, and the pomp and circumstances surrounding it can be fun. The slam dunk was obviously on a different night like it's been in years past, and I was fortunate enough to see Dwight Howard don the Superman cape and put a sticker up at the top of the backboard, but the game itself was completely forgetful. That was actually one of the rare blows, one like 30 points or something. So all in all, we all know what's going to happen here. It's going to be basically 3 quarters of just up and down the court slam dunk fest, and then in the fourth quarter the teams will play games. I do like that they're keeping the Kobe format with the race to win, to 24 there at the end. I think that'll make it more entertaining. And the other thing, if we're looking for storylines, which we're a podcast that is, LeBron taking Giannis first. He wanted to get Giannis on his team. This will be the first time these two have had a chance to play on the same unit in the All-Star game. And a little bit of a shade thrown at the Utah Jazz, as both Gobert and Donovan Mitchell were selected last. And isn't that just the story of the Jazz? Best record in the NBA, best team against the spread. They can't get any love from the referees, a la Donovan Mitchell getting thrown out of the game and fined today $25,000 for his comments in Philly. And once again, they're the last team. They're kind of like, and pardon my un-PC, the fat kid that you've had to pick last when you're playing football at recess when you're in elementary school. It's like, all right, fine, we'll take him on our team. So, hey, don't be surprised if Donovan Mitchell actually goes out there, Chuck, and has a pretty big game. And again, I am digging deep into the dirt to find storylines, because it just isn't. The All-Star game is just not what it once was. When I was a kid growing up, and you had Jordan and Barkley and all these amazing guys that really hated each other going hard, it was a little bit different feel.
Yeah, it is, and I don't want to take away the enjoyment of the All-Star game for the fans who enjoy it. I personally, at this point, Casey, I'm like you. I don't really enjoy the All-Star game all that much. I will say, truthfully, I will watch the 3-point contest. I will watch the slam dunk contest because I enjoy the heck out of both of those. And I will watch the fourth quarter this year because I enjoy the race to 24, because there actually is some defense that's played. I was aghast yesterday when I got my format sheet from ESPN radio, because I will be in studio running the game for our station. And I saw the projection of potentially 6 hours of broadcast. I about passed out. So I'm going, oh my gosh. So I'm not really excited about that. The other 3 quarters of the game, I'm not really excited about. I think there's we could go through a whole lot of reasons for that. That's immaterial. But fans, if you enjoy the All-Star game, then you know what? I enjoy the All-Star game. And that's what the most important thing is. So I don't want to poo-poo your experience.
Go ahead, Casey.
Sue, let me toss a question. Let me toss a question out here before we get off the NBA and give you guys a second to think about it, because I've got my opinion. Let's talk a little bit about maybe biggest surprise teams here, since we've got a couple of days to digest. As far as maybe overachievers and underachievers, I already talked about the Phoenix Suns. They would be right at the top of my list of overachievers. I certainly had them as a playoff qualifier, but not the number 2 seed in the West. And as far as teams that have let us down a little bit, I'm looking at you, Dallas Mavericks. Look, I love Luka Doncic. I know Porzingis has been injured, but they're a team that I think the league and general fans that don't follow us closely expected to be a lot better than sitting here in the 8-hole with an 18-16 record. Now, that's with a caveat, because if they were in the East, they'd be seated as high as number 4. So that's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles. But I'm a little disappointed with the way that the Mavericks came out this season. And then in the East, the Heat are starting to rebound a little bit here, Vasu, at 18-18. But coming off the world-beating performance that they had in their run to the finals last year, I think we all expected them to probably be a top 4 contender. I'm not saying they would have surpassed the Bucks, and none of us saw the Nets really coming on like they did before they got Durant. But looking at the Mavericks and looking at the Heat, those are two teams, if I'm in that fan base, I'm saying, look, we really should be primed to make a second half run. And I'm wondering if Mark Cuban's pockets aren't going to be opened up a little bit, and they look to add a player, Vasu, because they seem like they've got a nice core roster. You've obviously got one of the most electric players to come into this league in many years in Doncic. It seems like a destination where somebody would be happy to be traded to, and that could improve their stock here in the second half.
Yeah, Casey, I agree with you. As far as expectations, I think the Utah Jazz have exceeded their expectations. I don't think anybody thought they were number 1 going to be like this with less than 10 losses coming in halfway through the year. Lakers and Clippers have probably come down a little bit from what people thought. I think everybody thought they were going to go 72-0 or 71-1, and that's clearly not the case. Anthony Davis not there. Paul George had some issues the other day from an injury standpoint or dizziness, something like that. In the East, obviously the Brooklyn Nets and their offense has picked up a little bit, but boy, you find me a team that's going to play defense, and I'll tell you a team that's going to exceed expectations this year in the NBA, because there's not the Brooklyn Nets, they scored 132 points the other night. They gave up 111 to the Houston Rockets, and I'll guarantee, and I didn't do the research on it. Anybody on Facebook that wants to do it, go look at the Houston Rockets' last 10 to 12 games since James Harden left and find out what their pace is and find out what their offensive efficiency is and their defensive efficiency is. And if it's near 101 or 102, I'll be shot whacked. That's normal. But if it's like 105 or 106, I'll be shocked. That's an aberration of what happened against the Nets, and I think eventually that's going to come back and hurt the Nets. And then the Charlotte Hornets, the same thing with them. I think the Charlotte Hornets, they're in 6th place, and they're a game back out of the 4th seed. I really like the way they're playing offense, and this is even without Gordon Hayward having a great year, because he was the big name coming into this season. Boston's going to have to add a player if they want to stay in the 4th seed. Those New York Knicks are 5th after their win yesterday against the Detroit Pistons. So I don't know if that's mediocrity. I don't know if it's parity. I don't know if it just seems like some of these teams offensively are exceeding their offensive expectations. But boy, 28 out of 30 teams are definitely underwhelming defensively in the NBA. No doubt about it. All right, well, that's it. Enjoy the All-Star weekend. We'll review it a little bit on Monday. Who's your MVP for Sunday, Casey? We'll just throw that out there.
You know what? Because he took him first and he loves him, I think Giannis might have an opportunity to pick that bad boy up. I know it's more sexy to pick kind of a wild card, but why not the Greek freak? LeBron, I'm sure, is going to be feeding him the ball. He wanted to play with him, Charlie, this whole time, and so now he gets his wish. I'm sure Giannis is going to probably have a pretty good game, and they are in an Eastern Conference city, and Atlanta's not going to have the MVP, so it's a crapshoot.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I like that pick of Giannis. I really do. I don't think LeBron feels the need to have it. And I think he might, he just might take him and make him look good there. That would be a nice hook and a nice way to say, hey, Giannis, if you get tired of Milwaukee, maybe you could walk in and say, hey, I want to go to LA.
Well, I'm gonna go with one of the Utah guys because they got picked last, and it's probably true to say that they don't get a lot of respect and they don't get a lot of attention. That, in fact, LeBron James even made the comment yesterday that you don't pick the Utah Jazz when you're picking your teams on NBA Live or NBA 2K, whatever your iteration is. I just don't see a lot of guys picking Karl Malone and John Stockton as your team to go to, or as your go-to team on NBA 2K or NBA Live. I'm not even a gamer, so I don't even know how that works, but I would imagine that Utah is probably not a very popular team in that. And don't they do – I don't know what they do in the Pro Bowl, or they used to when they pick the players in the Pro Bowl. Don't they give the last guy picked a car or something like that? So got Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell are sitting there going, God, I hope I go last. I hope I go last. I could use a new set of wheels. I could use a new set of wheels. I'm not sure exactly if they do that or not. But other than that, Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert are the last two guys picked from the best team in the NBA, Charlie.
In the NBA, I think the last guy picked has to buy dinner for everybody, I believe, with those salaries that they're getting.
Well, that's not going to happen this year with everybody in quarantine. All right. Well, that's it for the NBA. That's Nevada Party, Casey Freelove, Charlie O. If you notice on the bottom of our ticker, we've got all the games that are going to happen this weekend. Conference basketball is going to end this week. Some of the conference tournaments have already started. The A10, the WCC first round games. What was the other ones that I said? The Ohio Valley Conference and the West Coast Conference, the A10, the Missouri Valley Conference has had a couple of games today. Loyola Chicago, number 20 in the country, really whooped up on Southern Illinois today, 73-49. I lost that game by a point, Casey, by 1 point on the over-under. Unbelievable how close we've all been. And this is in COVID. So when we get out of COVID, it's all going to turn around. I can already see it. But keep checking the bottom of the screen on our podcast here. You'll see all the games coming up this weekend for all the this is the American we have on there. The SEC games we have on there as well, too. How these things go. So I thought we're supposed to get all of them on here. So we'll see. Pac-12. Anyway, the bottom line is we get a lot of basketball this weekend, and it'll be very interesting to see what's going on with that. Let's start with the ACC because it's a fascinating conference with the ACC this weekend because you don't know who's good, you don't know who's good and who's not good, and yet here are the games this weekend that we have: Boston College, Miami, and Georgia Tech, Wake Forest today. Florida State, who I can't tell if they're the best team or not, at Notre Dame. Pitt at Clemson. Virginia at Louisville is a pretty good game as well, too. Louisville needs probably a couple more wins and a good conference tournament to even have a shot to get into the dance. And then Duke, North Carolina, as Jay Billis says, never disappoints. And so this is probably a game that they're playing for to get into the tournament, Casey. And then Vatech, NC State postponed.
Yeah, I've got some early lines for you folks here. Carolina's -2 against Duke. That total at 148.5. Virginia opened at 4. It's been bet down to 3 at a couple of books at Louisville. That's an interesting line there, considering how well the Cardinals typically play at home. And you said it, brother. I mean, this is a weekend where maybe we can finally figure out who's who as far as the Atlantic Coast Conference, because I think Florida State will win the game. I'm not touching betting against Notre Dame, though. I've been burned both times I've gone against the Irish this year, so I will be laying off. But look, they're 11-3 in conference. They're 15-4 overall. They played very well in stretches, and they're much better at home. That's why I'll stay away from the away, because they're only 500, 3-3 on the road. As far as Carolina and Duke, we talked about them a little bit yesterday. Both teams actually have above 500 records in conference. Now, if Duke loses that game, they will finish the ACC conference play at 9-9, so that's not good. And their overall record's only 11-10, and the only reason we're talking about them is because of their coach and the name on the front of their jersey, because they lost their best player who already said he's going to the NBA. I think I would probably angle towards Carolina. Then teams with work to do ahead of them, Georgia Tech and Clemson. Tech's at 10-6, 14-8 overall. I've watched them play just a little bit this year, but they've been playing pretty good basketball. But I think, Charlie, if we're talking about the Atlantic Coast Conference, the bottom line is, if I'm a fan in the Eastern U.S. or in the Tobacco Road area, I'm expecting probably the least amount of teams that we've seen selected in quite some time to head into the tournament. And if you really want to get down to it, guys, if we're sitting here even off the podcast talking about it, I would doubt right now if I gave all three of us a bracket, we would have an ACC team in the Final Four.
You know, I think that's true. I really do, Casey. And it's interesting. If Florida State wins, wins the conference, they'll be a back-to-back winner. They will be Leonard Hamilton will be only the third coach to win back-to-back ACC titles since 2002. The only other two coaches to have done that, Roy Williams at Carolina and Tony Bennett at Virginia. Coach K has not done that. So the ACC is always a very, a very vibrant, very competitive conference, and we're used to that, and we're just not seeing that kind of competition this year. That Duke North Carolina game, a lot of people are saying, hey, if Duke loses, they're out of the tournament, they're on the bubble, they fall off. You know what, folks? I do not believe that for 1 minute. Duke is going to the tournament, take it to the bank. They're going to give them quad one quality losses. They're just going to the tournament. They are. Because for one thing, eyeballs will be on the TV if Duke is in a game. Plus the fact I really expect them to do well in the conference tournament as well. I think this will be a close game. If I had to bet that game, I would probably bet on Carolina, but I still expect to see Duke in the tournament, guys.
Let's hit some Big Ten games. Let's talk about yesterday a little bit as we get to the Big Ten games. First of all, for the weekend, Rutgers, Minnesota, Indiana at Purdue, usually a good rivalry game. But the big game on Saturday, Illinois at Ohio State, especially after what Illinois did to Michigan on Tuesday without their best player, DeSumo, and they blow out Michigan by 25 points. Let's go back yesterday to the Michigan State game. We kind of knew this was kind of a problem for Michigan State coming in. 11.5 was going to be not enough, as it turned out. 19-point victory, Charlie. 59-40 Michigan over Michigan State. Did they get woken up by Illinois on Tuesday, and now they're just going to ride through?
Well, I think they had a wake-up call. I'm sure they had a wake-up call and a come-to-Jesus meeting. I'm sure they had that. But the thing that I found most fascinating was that their coach showed them a video of Draymond Green giving a motivational speech to the Spartans, and it in turn motivated the Wolverines. I think that is one of the greatest stories of the entire game. So yeah, they got motivated, and I think that the outcome of that game is exactly what we expected. Now the interesting part is that part 2 of this series is on Sunday, and how will this come out on Sunday in East Lansing? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, because I don't know how important that game will be on Sunday. So we'll just have to see. But I think the game on Sunday is still going to be much more important to Michigan State than it will be to Michigan, and we'll just have to kind of factor that in when we look at it. But Michigan came out, took care of business, did what we thought they were going to have to do, and they did it.
Casey, I must have missed that Michigan State game for Sunday when I put the schedule up here on the board. But Illinois, Ohio State, obviously the one of the better games tomorrow, and then Sunday, Michigan State. Really, there's still a chance for 6 or 7 teams to go from the Big Ten. I know the Big 12 is taking over it, but what are your thoughts on the Big Ten right now going into this weekend?
Well, the logo on the front theory that Charlie was talking about, with Duke probably getting a bid, excuse me, guys, is going to be tested, because with that loss, Michigan State falls to 8-11 on the year, 14-11 overall. Outside of Aaron Henry, they just don't have much going as a unit, and they were really kind of soundly beat in the first half. Then the Sparty just couldn't find a way to get into it in the second half. So I think if you're a Wolverine fan, you've got to be feeling good. And let's not, completely crap on Michigan for their loss earlier in the week against Illinois. Michigan's a much younger team than Illinois. They've got a younger head coach as far as experience, and they're 14-2 in the conference. They're going to win the conference, because there's no way Illinois can catch them. They're 15-4 in conference, and the Wolverines are the regular season champions at 19-2 overall, just 2 losses in the conference. I think as long as Wagner and Dickinson play well, they're going to go deep in the tournament, because they're going to have a size edge down low, and I still like them. And again, when I talk about betting on the tournament, I will be spreading money across multiple teams and trying to grind a profit, because I just can't figure out who the best team is. Typically, I at least have an inkling. I work backwards when I fill out my bracket, as should anybody that's a savvy basketball fan. You start with your champion and then work your way out as to how it's going to flow. This year, that's going to be a much more difficult task. I think it may be made a little bit easier with the game you alluded to. Illinois at Ohio State coming on tomorrow, opened as a pick-em. Early Vegas insider consensus has the Buckeyes as a 1.5-point favorite. And this is a great tester game to figure out basically seeding. I know that right now the Big Ten potentially could have 2 teams on the 1 line, depending on how the conference tournament goes. But I'm not going to move off the Big 12 as, in my opinion, still the best conference. If you want to go top to bottom, okay, the bottom feeders in the Big 10 might be a little bit better than the bottom feeders in the Big 12. That's not going to matter, especially with only a 16-team NIT this year. You're not going to see any of those teams playing in the postseason. They'll just be staying home. So I think Illinois, Ohio State will be a nice telling thing. And then also one other thing, and we'll talk about it when the tournament gets going next week. Michigan State in the first game of the Big Ten tournament, I can't think of the last time I lost betting on them. Even if they stink, they always cover in the first round of the Big Ten tournament. Believe me, this was a steadfast rule for me when I lived in Vegas, and I've ridden it every year since I've been away from there. I love Sparty. I don't care who they're playing in the first round. That will be my pick on Monday or Tuesday or whenever this tournament gets going. But I'm starting to digress, Vasu. I think we're probably going to see 6 teams. There's really some shuffle room, though, when you look at the middle of the conference, because I think, okay, Michigan, Illinois, Iowa, Purdue, Ohio State, Wisconsin, then you could have people at Maryland saying, well, hey, we're 9-10. If we win this weekend, we'll be 500 in conference. Rutgers has just fallen off the map. I tried to get all excited about them and Ron Harper Jr., but they burned me both times that I bet on them this year. So I think we could be looking at 6 from there, unless Maryland has a convincing win this weekend. They are 15-11 overall. But another thing that matters is they're just 3-6 against the USA Today top 25. I was trying to bring something really smart to the table as far as quadrant wins, but even after a 20-minute Google reading and search today, guys, I don't feel like I know any more than I did before, Vasu, as far as why these matter more. As Charlie said, quality losses are complete nonsense. A loss is a loss is a loss.
Vasu Vadaparty, Casey Freelove, Charlie O. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Download the Viget app and use the MTMR promo code to get it in there with all the others that have action and have conversations. Get in our betting leagues as well, too. I'm interested in the Big 12. After what happened last night, boy, how about Texas? Are we more worried about Oklahoma, or are we surprised that Texas went in there with a win? And then Oklahoma State, we knew they were going to lose to Baylor, but boy, 12 points seemed like a lot. And sure enough, it ended up being right on the number as Oklahoma State lost by 11. If it wasn't for Cade Cunningham, that would have been a 20-point game because Baylor's defense really did suffocate everybody, Casey, in terms of their ability to shoot from the outside. Cunningham was able to keep them in. He did hurt his ankle at the end, and it kind of led to kind of an inflated score a little bit because they were fouling and they couldn't hit jump shots at the end. But how about Oklahoma, Texas? I was all over Texas yesterday, and I just think they're so athletic in that conference that even Kansas had a tough time last night with UTEP, for crying out loud, especially after their 2 big wins over Baylor and Texas the week before. So what's your take on the Big 12 this weekend, Casey?
Well, I mean, I watched most of that Oklahoma-Texas game. I was on the Sooners, and I texted you early in the second half saying I made the wrong pick, and then all of a sudden Oklahoma went on a run and even took a 1-point lead, but Texas was able to get back. Good shooting from Jericho Sims, and they're a nice team. I mean, they're very long. You look at them on the court, they're going to be a team that's tough to defend, and they're going to pull down a lot of rebounds, and that certainly was the case. If I'm an Oklahoma fan, I'm starting to get worried. This team's only 1 game over 500 now in conference play. If I'm not mistaken, they've lost 4 in a row, including back-to-back to Oklahoma State earlier in the week. So they're going to be a team that probably needs to pick up a win in the Big 12 tournament. I mean, they're in anyway, but I think that they're going to be one to watch. This weekend's slate is fantastic, by the way, in the Big 12. Tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific, the Cowboys, perhaps without Cade Cunningham, head up to Morgantown to take on number 6 West Virginia, a team that Vasu's been very high on throughout the latter part of the season. Then Sunday, another tasty matchup with 18th-ranked Texas Tech, who's surging a little bit, at number 3 Baylor. Baylor righted the ship last night. You mentioned that 12 points seemed a little ridiculous. When Cunningham went out, I'm sure gamblers clutched their tickets a little tighter, but it ended up working out that the Cowboys covered that number. I think Texas Tech is another team that maybe isn't getting as much run, but when we talk about coaching matters, Chris Beard certainly knows how to do it. And the Big 12 is loaded with coaches that have either appeared in a national title game or won a national championship. So you've got to think that they've got the right mindset heading into the tournament. And I think a whole lot of teams are going to be getting in. Baylor, West Virginia, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma. There's 7 teams right there, right for the picking. So this is going to be a very difficult conference. Probably don't want to face any of these teams over the weekend. And I think that when we even get to the conference tournament, we might see an upset or 2. If I ask you, Charlie, your way too early prediction for a Big 12 final, I think West Virginia might be a team that could be there the way that they've played. They just saw Baylor. They took them to overtime at home. They're certainly not lacking confidence when going against them. I'm starting to sink on Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, as I mentioned, Cunningham in or out. That decides whether or not I like them. And also, let's not sleep on Self's Jayhawks. They were left for dead 12 games into the season, and they played almost flawless basketball since. So this is going to be a wild ride. Really looking forward to it. And the other thing I saw on ESPN last night, the lowest seed that they have projected right now, I think, is a 4 for the conference. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it really is. I wouldn't bet against West Virginia. I mean, Huggins, He knows how to put a team in there and make them tough, and they're tough teams, and he gets them tournament ready. So West Virginia Baylor in the finals, no, that wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all. The one thing and Kansas coming on and Self and his team always scare me, and I like his style. I like him as a coach. I think he does a great job putting talent together. The only thing that concerned me last night is I was a little concerned that they didn't do more against UTEP. Only beating them by 5 points. I kind of went, UTEP's just not that good. Now, sometimes you play down to your competition. I understand that, but this is not the time of year to do that. And I would have liked to have seen that been a 10, 12 point win. That would have made me feel a little better. Now they did win, and a win's a win. But I was just a bit,
not for our purposes.
Well, excellent point, Vesu.
Yeah.
Remember the name of the show, Charlie.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would have liked to have seen that been just from a basketball standpoint. I would have liked to have seen that been a little larger win. It would have made me feel more comfortable. But yeah, I have no argument saying, hey, best college basketball conference in the country, no problem.
Let me ask you this. By the way, that Kansas UTEP game, I'm not sure. Somebody may have to look that up, or somebody can let us know on Facebook. By the way, thanks to Tom and Christine for watching on Facebook. Everybody on Facebook as well, too. And also, you can download and subscribe if you miss any of the live broadcasts. We're on Stables Media Facebook page and Stables Media YouTube page as well, too. We're getting a lot of response on the YouTube page. Thanks to everybody for that. Let me just talk about the Big 12 here for one last second here. I don't know if that Kansas UTEP game was a game that was postponed from earlier in the year, because it seems really weird to have a non-conference game scheduled this late before a conference tournament game. So they may not have played all their players. I didn't see the box score. It wasn't a game that was on my board anyway, because the 17-point favorite this late in the year just doesn't seem right, and a non-conference game. So I got a feeling that he didn't play all his players. Minutes-wise, that's just a guess on my part. If somebody has the box score, maybe they can say that, or somebody on Facebook can find the comment for that. But I got a feeling that they did not. I'm not so worried about Kansas, especially after what they did to Baylor last week and what they did to Texas the week before. But it was a game that was really weird to watch yesterday, at least the highlights that I saw. So let me ask Casey. Casey's good with the Big 12. Charlie's good with the Big 10. Have we moved? Are they equal in terms of their comparison? Because we were talking Big 10, Big 10, Big 10, 7, 8 teams early in the year, and now Texas, and now the Big 12 with all the teams that are there, including all the way down to the 7, 8, 9 seeds who could end up winning the Big 12 tournament. Casey, you think it's still 1A, or is somebody taking a slight lead in this horse race as we come down to the weekend?
Well, when we look at what Las Vegas thinks of them, they think that the Big 10 is still the clear class favorite. I mean, Baylor's 3-1 right now. They're the number 2 choice behind Gonzaga, which I'm not putting any money on Gonzaga. They're a mid-major. I'm sorry, that's my bias. But then you've got Michigan at 4-1. They're the 4th choice, followed by Illinois, Iowa, and Ohio State. That's a bunch up right there, guys. Talk about a logjam. Michigan 4-1, Illinois 11-1. This is to win March Madness. Iowa and Ohio State both 14-1. And we have to go down a little bit to start finding more respect for the Big 12 outside of Baylor. West Virginia right now and Texas both getting you 20-1 on your odds. Kansas is 25-1, as is Texas Tech. So for the purposes of a gambling show, it looks like the Big 10 has a little more respect. As far as the eye test, I'm still siding with the Big 12, and when I fill out my bracket, that will be reflected. And last point before I throw it to you, Charlie, I was checking the box score when Vasu mentioned it. I don't think Kansas played their starters much in the first half. They were down 34-20. 20 points in Lawrence against UTEP is certainly an abomination, and they needed a furious second half rally, and I'm seeing that their regulars all had a lot of points in the second half. So that might have just been a little bit of coaching there, Charlie. But you've got to respect Vegas and their future odds, because they're the ones that get paid the big bucks to put these statistics out. And if they say that the Big 10 has the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7th best contender to win the whole thing, you probably need to put a couple bucks on that.
You know my stance. They don't build those big buildings because they lose money. So, those back rooms guys, they have those guys called risk management managers. And so they watch those things closely. I always know we hear the well, they've got the inside information. No, folks, they watch trends, they watch odds, they invented sabermetrics before anybody knew what that was. So yeah, I think you got to pay attention to that. So I'm willing to cede that information to them. I would just say, in my opinion, the Big 12, that case, then I would have to say is trending up with a rising star.
I agree with you, Charlie, in that sense, because I think they've got more teams top to bottom that are more comparable to the Big Ten's top to bottom right now, because Minnesota struggled. Casey mentioned Rutgers, Ohio State kind of had been down the last couple of weeks, but they're going to be in there as well too. So 1 to 10 or 1 to 12, depending on how many teams you have in your conference we're talking about. I think Big 12 is kind of taking a step up. And from the standpoint of the national championship odds, I just think that we're not talking. Well, I don't want to talk about national championship odds when it comes to that, although that is kind of the premise that we're on. But I think these teams in the Big 12 can get to a second round game or a third round game. More teams might be able to get to a second or third round game, I think, is what I was angling at, than a Big 10 team would in terms of the number of teams or the quantity of teams that go from opening rounds to the Elite Eight or the Final Four. And I think that's where I wanted to leave off with that. All right, last one we hit. I'm just going to talk about the Pac-12 for a second. The Arizona State-Utah game, nothing there. There's going to be nothing going on. Colorado blew out Arizona State. Arizona State had like a 5-point lead, 7-point lead on them. Colorado just jumped them in the second half. They ended up winning by 14, covering a 10.5-point spread. But the game of the weekend this weekend, and it's going to be for first place, especially after what USC did the other night, Wednesday night, beating Stanford by 37. USC at UCLA. They've handled UCLA the last time they played. If UCLA wins the game, which I don't think they will, then they end up in a tie, I believe, for first place. But I'm not sure who gets the tiebreaker or their co-champs in that conference. I think they call it co-champs. But from a seeding standpoint, UCLA still has to win this game and do well in the Pac-12 tournament next week to solidify their spot in the tournament, because I just don't think there's more than 3 teams in the Pac-12 that are going to go. And USC clearly, and not just by what they did to Stanford, by what they did all year, Casey, in terms of blowing people out. I see the conference, and we talked about it for 6 weeks. USC is the best team in the conference.
Yeah, and Evan Mobley's the best player in the conference, and I think he was your preseason pick for being the best player in the conference, and he's going to
He was. You know what? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to say Chris Duarte played very well the other night against UCLA.
Fair enough. And as far as this game in particular, this matchup, it's at Pauley. The Bruins have won 11 straight at home. That's no easy task. And I found a fun fact here. The significance of 62, as ESPN puts it, USC is 0-5 when its offense scores 62 points or fewer. Probably a lot of teams have a lot of losses when they score fewer than 62. And then, as I mentioned, UCLA, not only 11 straight at home, but they're 11-0 when holding their opponents to 62 or fewer. So if you're looking for a key number, that might be it. And I'll bet you that affects the total. I don't have one here because that game's not till Sunday, so I don't see any early odds on it. These are both decent teams. They are the only 2 teams in the Pac-12 that I could throw a few bucks on. I know you don't like me going all futures, but the first Pac-12 team on the board is USC at 25-1 to win the tournament, then UCLA at 35-1. And I have to scroll down so far, I can't even find another one. I don't even know where Colorado is on this list. Man, are they even on this list? There they are, 50-1 for the Buffalo. So those are probably the 3 teams that are going to be, teams you look at in your bracket as far as being able to advance. It's another year in the Pac-12 where we're left wondering, hey guys, coaches, recruits, people that go out and get talent, have them stay home. There's so many good players from Washington State all the way down to Southern California. If you could just keep them here on the West Coast, you'd be the best conference in basketball. Thing is, the kids know that the Cadillacs and the Blue Bloods, not named UCLA because they haven't been relevant for so long, all sit east of the Mississippi. So that's why they leave, Chuck. But getting back to this matchup, I think they're both pretty good teams, and I think they're both teams capable of at least winning one game in the tournament.
Yeah, Casey, absolutely. And talking about guys staying home, there's another problem for the Pac-12 looming. It really looks like Sean Miller is going to be gone at Arizona after this year. And that, I don't even want to start in the controversies there, but you can't argue with the success they've had there. So there's a school that's going to spin out and probably lose a lot of talent. And now there's a lot of rumor going on that Bobby Hurley is going to be the target of Boston College to fill their hole there. And that would be a big blow to the Pac-12 because he has really upgraded that program at Arizona State. They haven't had quite the success yet that they want to have, but that program is on the uptick there. And he's a good name, good figure, good recruiter. And if he gets ripped out of there, that's going to just hurt basketball in the state of Arizona horribly. And you're going to see good recruits coming out of there that are going to wind up either in California or back east. So it's a serious problem.
Before we hit the SEC here real quick on the last part of college basketball, the Big East, Villanova without Connor Gillespie, that's going to hurt them going into the tournament. UConn, a big name, where Danny Hurley, coincidentally, Bobby Hurley's brother's out there in the Big East. So that'll be interesting to see. Mountain West, it looks like it's going to be between Boise State and Utah State. And then the other one that I had here, well, the Pac-12, we said USC. Anything in the SEC this weekend, Casey? I'm not really sure. One note on Bobby Hurley, though. If he goes to Boston College, though, the money in the ACC is a little bit better than what the Pac-12 is. So it'll be easier to pay those technical foul fines that he gets in the Pac-12. That's for sure. There's no doubt about that based on the rants and tirades. That ACC rants and tirades go a lot further than they do with Pac-12 crowds. I can guarantee that.
There's one thing to keep an eye on Sunday in the SEC. You've got a good matchup with Florida traveling to Tennessee. The reason why I mentioned that, they're jockeying for position as far as the conference tournament. Right now, the Gators 9-6 in the SEC, Tennessee 9-7. The Volunteers and the Missouri Tigers are the biggest sinkers on our list. Had those two teams played up to their potential, we might talk a little more Southern basketball on this program, but they're not. The hottest team maybe in college basketball, at least one of them on your list, has to be number 12, Arkansas. Love the way the Hogs are playing, 12-4, got a blowout win at South Carolina their last time out. They'll be hosting Texas A&M, who's not very good, 2-7 in conference. And the thing is, everything's already been determined as far as regular season title. Congrats again to Alabama. They're ranked number 8. Petty's been playing very well. They're 20-win team, and they're 15-2 in conference, so they will be the 1 seed. The way it's looking like it's going to shape up, it'll go Bama, Arkansas, LSU, the winner of the Florida-Tennessee game, then Missouri. And this is going to be another year where it's a conference going, man, we probably could have done a little better as far as getting teams in. Put it this way, the NIT may be laden with Southeastern Conference teams. They may get 2 or 3 teams in that final 16. I'm just kidding around, guys. They'll probably only end up getting 2. And then I can't go without mentioning the most disappointing team in all of college basketball, finally concluding their season, 8-15, Kentucky. I've got inside sources that I work with that are from the state of Kentucky who are literally on the phone every day. And people are kind of sick of Cal. I say give the guy a little leeway. You can't argue with going to the Elite Eight like every other year since he's been there. But when you're at Kentucky, it's kind of like coaching football at Alabama. If you lose a game or you don't win the national championship, it feels like a bad year. This has been a horrific year. He has a magical formula, guys. And Charlie, you've seen it year in and year out. I mean, look, a tenth of the NBA played at Kentucky, but he just missed this year. So I think that the Wildcats in South Carolina, I would run away from that game because I don't think either team cares. And the one thing about Kentucky, even if it is a senior day, I don't think they even have any seniors on their team because that's not the way that program is run. So overall, the SEC has not had a fantastic year. I don't know about Missouri and Tennessee's chances of even getting in or if they can make any noise in the tournament. But I would say if you're looking for 2 teams that are legit contenders, they are in Fayetteville and they are in Tuscaloosa for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting. I heard an interview last night with Musselman, and he I know a lot of people, and particularly in the area where we are in Sacramento, don't like Musselman because he didn't do particularly well when he was the head coach of the Kings. But that's no saying nothing. No one does well as a head coach of the Kings. But he has gone. He did well at Nevada. He went down and has done very well in Arkansas. And he's just excited. He's a little crazy, but he's done very well down there. And they're a little nervous at Arkansas because it looks like Pitino's going to be out in Minnesota, and they are very interested in getting him to come to Minnesota because his dad was the head coach at Minnesota. And the only thing they don't know is, well, in fact, they know it right now, is that trying to compete with the money that he's getting at Arkansas will be tough. But if you really want him, there's money in them. There are hills in Minnesota, and you might be able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of the season.
No doubt about it. The college basketball scene will be very interesting coming up on Monday at 4:15, 1:15 Pacific, right here on Facebook Live, Stables Media Facebook page, Stables Media YouTube. the regular season will be done for conference basketball. We'll have all the brackets and all the graphics set up for conference tournaments. We'll spend a good hour probably on that, good 45 minutes to an hour on that, talking about each of the conferences as we get ready for Selection Sunday, which is 9 days away from now on Sunday afternoon, right after the Big Ten ends up getting their act together. And then 20 minutes later, Selection Sunday will come on. Boy, it's going to be weird to see nobody in the room in Kansas City or wherever they do the Selection Sunday with all the athletic directors. What a year we've had. We're almost at the 1-year anniversary of that. So I'll be very interested to see how this whole tournament plays off in Indianapolis and how they handle these conference tournaments, because I can tell you, seems like we're getting better, and it seems like a year ago when everything shut down, it seems like we're getting back to where we're going from that. And as far as, the Musselman name, very big in Minnesota. And to Calipari's point, you can't get sick of them. I mean, it's hard to get sick of them when you're only there for a year, to Casey's point. That's for darn sure. So if you had to put up with John Calipari for 4 years, I can imagine that would be a little grating. Let's go to Philadelphia, or let's go to New Jersey when they were in the New Jersey Nets, to find out what some of those NBA players thought about some of the college tactics. Rick Pitino could probably tell you a few stories too about Boston and New York from his college days as well too. So you run a little bit more in college. And Steve Kerr had the best line when somebody said, "Oh, you being Steph Curry's supervisor," and he goes, no, this is the NBA. Steph Curry is my boss. It's not the other way around. So you just roll through that. But anyway, like I said, Monday we'll have all the conference tournament previews. We'll have all the power conferences. We'll have some of the lower level conferences, some of their championship games. The WCC will get their games going on Monday with Gonzaga as well too. So we'll all be set to go for next Sunday for Selection Sunday. All right, the last day of our preview, because we're going to be all college basketball next week and all NBA. Let's start out with the National League West and our baseball previews 2 weeks into the spring training. I don't want to say debacle. These 7 6-inning games, I understand why they're doing it. They don't count. I think everybody's making a big deal out of it. I guess if you're lucky enough to have tickets and paying full price, then you probably want to see 9 innings. But those are really the only people that count. Between Florida and Arizona, it's been an interesting spring training. I don't know how much MLB TV you guys have been watching, or any reports you've been watching, but there they are, the NL West. We talked about the Central on yesterday's show, and then we talked about the East on Monday's show. Arizona at plus 12.5, 6,000 for the pennant. Colorado plus 15,000, plus 8,000 for the pennant. San Francisco plus 12.5, plus 6,000 for the pennant. So this right here says Dodgers, Padres, NL West, Charlie. There's no doubt about it right there. By the way, good luck to Ryan McMahon replacing Nolan Arenado, family friend. So he's the only guy that's happy that Arenado got traded, so he gets full-time play, Charlie.
Gosh, I mean, is anybody surprised looking at those odds? I mean, I'm not. Shoot, if I go up to Reno, and I'm not gonna jump on a plane. Who am I kidding? I go up and lay down a few futures. I'm going to lay some money down on the Dodgers. I'm going to lay a little money down on and spread a little money around San Diego on the West. I mean, come on. Who am I kidding? Both teams have upgraded. The Dodgers stayed together, and the Padres upgraded. I mean, for heaven's sakes. So they're going to make it very interesting, and it'll be a fun season. So I mean, what else do you want to talk about? Everybody else, what did they do? Nothing.
Let me ask you 2 quick questions here, Casey, before you do your preview. Give me 1 or 2 reasons for the Arizona Diamondbacks, Colorado Rockies, San Francisco Giants to be hopeful for. And do you think the Padres' odds to win the World Series at plus 800? I think that's a little low. I think they should be higher. There's still other teams. If you're talking about all 30 teams in Major League Baseball, I would think they'd be in the thousands as far as winning the World Series. These aren't the division odds, and maybe about 600 win the NL West, but it looks like it's going to be a Dodgers division. But give the Arizona Diamondbacks fans, the Colorado Rockies fans, San Francisco Giants fans on our podcast, give them something to hope for this year.
Okay, well, Rockies fans, you can hope that the Pirates finish with a worse record than you for the worst record in the National League. I mean, that's about the only place I can go with that. I mean, look, the Arizona Diamondbacks, they have a decent roster. I mean, I like David Peralta. I like Asdrubal Cabrera. They've got some bats. If Madison Bumgarner can, ask Father Time to borrow a year or two, maybe he can still be a frontline stud. I don't love the rest of their pitching lineup, Gallen, Kelly, Smith, and then Luke Weaver there penciled in at number 5. That could change. They've got Soria out of the bullpen. Put it this way, the Diamondbacks will probably be a team, if you're looking at over-unders, they will push towards whatever that number is set at by Las Vegas. I think they're going to be a middle-of-the-pack type unit. I haven't done any scouting on the Rockies because the biggest move they made this offseason was allowing Nolan Arenado to leave for basically nothing. And the Giants, I haven't fully examined yet either, and I apologize for that because I know I'm here in Northern California. I will do more due diligence, and we'll talk about them as the season gets going. My big question to you, Vasu, because as we dissect the Padres and the Dodgers lineup, obviously they both got elite level offenses. I'm looking at the lineups and it's just disgusting. I mean, if you're a 4th or 5th rotation pitcher on any other team and you're getting to the bottom of the lineup, you're like, isn't this supposed to get a little easier? Oh, wait, Will Myers is now up to bat here in the 7 hole for San Diego. So that's a little bit of an issue. I think it comes down to bullpen. You got to give the edge to the Dodgers. They've got Kenley Jansen. They've got Trinan, Joe Kelly, Brandon Morrow, and even Dustin May, who I think we'll probably see as a spot starter as well, because he proved he could do that during the World Series run. As far as the Padres, you got Drew Pomeranz as your closer. I like that. Emilio Pagan, decent as well. Mark Melanson, who I didn't even remember. I used to call him Melancon, but now I guess it's Melanson. Let me get it right. I've got a Milani and a Melanson here between me I'm talking about. But I think if you're going to go slight edge, because you're going to look for something to differentiate these teams, I would give the Dodgers the edge. You can't argue with how good they're going to be. There's no reason to hate on them unless you're a Giants fan. And the thing is, the most exciting thing is Mookie Betts may surpass Mike Trout as the best player in baseball this year, only because he's going to be getting the attention. Let's compare Dodgers Sunday night baseball games to Angels Sunday night baseball games. And it's going to look like the stock market this last week, just on a cliff as far as who's going to get more exposure. So I think LA's best days are still ahead, and they are really chomping at the bit. They only showed us a taste of how good they were in that 60-game run last year, Vasu. And I'm not just trying to inflate your head the size of the entire podcast because I know you're a fan. But look, anybody who follows the game understands that this team is the team to pick. You can't make an argument really for anybody else as we sit here before the season starts. Injuries are going to play into that. But Vasu, you've gotten me as a handicapper way more obsessed with bullpen and middle relief. And I think that'll be the tale that tells which team ends up finishing with, say, 104 wins compared to 99 or 100.
Well, Casey and Charlie, we're in the analytics mode now. It's all about bullpens and matchups nowadays. The starting pitchers are by the wayside by like the dinosaur. They're going to be like the dinosaur in the next 10, 15 years. As far as Mike Trout goes, yeah, poor Mike Trout doesn't get any publicity. He's on a bad team. They have to put Fernando Tatis on the cover of the MLB The Show game because Mike Trout doesn't want the publicity, and Mookie Betts could overwhelm take him from the marketing standpoint because he is with the marketing guru of the Dodgers versus the marketing gurus of the Angels that don't do anything, and the Angels don't have any pitching. We'll get to the AL West right now. The switch over here a little bit. The AL West odds a little bit more equal than the NL West odds. Let's say Houston at plus 2,900 for the pennant. The Angels 4,000 plus 2,000 for the pennant. I thought that might be a little low for them, honestly, unless their pitching is better than I thought. The A's at plus 2,200 with plus 1,000 for the pennant. Seattle, poor Seattle, plus 12.5 plus 5,000 for the pennant, and then Texas Rangers plus 15,000. You got a nice World Series. You weren't in it, but plus 15,000 for the Texas Rangers and plus 7,000. So, Casey, this is your wheelhouse right here, the American League West. Go ahead.
Well, the A's did pretty much nothing, to the surprise of pretty much no one, because that's what they do. They'll find a way to be relevant. I think I like their starting rotation. Bassett, number 1, penciled in. Minaya, if he's healthy, is great. Montas showed signs of greatness. Luzardo. And who knows, maybe they get a couple of these guys like Puck or Cotton back after all these injuries they've dealt with in the minor league. I like the signing of Trevor Rosenthal as your new closer. And don't forget, you've got other guys in there that are competent. Jake Diekman's fine. Romo gets you a few innings, and it's going to matter there. Offensively, look, they struggled a little bit when they had injuries last year, but this lineup on paper looks pretty good. I think a big question mark will be the departure of Marcus Semien and how Elvis Andrus, who's getting, a little long in the tooth, comes in there and plays short for the Athletics. And I think they know what they're doing because they have to make sure that they keep salary in mind when they're putting together their rosters. And I don't think that this team is terrible on paper. So I think the A's will be there as a contender, as they are every single year. Of course, all eyes will be on the Houston Astros, and I can't wait till I can actually go see a game at the Coliseum because I've got 2 years worth of heckling built up in my fandom here. Bring out the garbage cans and start smashing them there during a day game in the afternoon sun of the beautiful Bay Area. But look, not having George Springer will be an issue. George Springer is an elite talent, and he's the reason why I think the Blue Jays will probably end up being second in the race there in the American League in their division. But you still got Altuve, you still got Bregman, you've got Brantley, all good players. Carlos Correa penciled in at 5th right now. The lower end of their lineup, maybe not as strong as years past, but Greinke, McCullers, those are 2 good frontline pitchers. Presley is your closer. I think that Houston will be a team to be reckoned with. And whether we like them or not, Chuck, they built this team to make a run for about another year or 2 before all the salaries expire, and they will dump because that's what this tradition has been with this franchise. But I think all in all, the Astros and the A's are 2 teams to watch. Mariners, who knows? It seems like every year they play so good for a stretch that they actually get us excited, and then they just fall off a cliff like we were talking about with some other teams. But the American League West is going to be fun. You'll notice I didn't even mention the Angels, and if they didn't have Mike Trout, I probably wouldn't, Chuck.
Absolutely, Casey, and you're absolutely right. And I think you're right with the Mariners. The Mariners are going to come out of the gate. They're going to go around the first turn. They're going to go around the second turn. They're going to get to the back stretch, and then they're going to fall back because that's what they do. I mean, I don't know why, but that's what they do. They seem to be built. They seem to be built to start heading towards the mid part of the season, looking like they're going to be world beaters, and then they fall apart. It's been their heritage for the last 10 years or so. And I don't expect it to be any different this year. I think you're totally right about Houston. They are built to win now. And I think Springer's loss is going to be hard on them, but I think they're also at this point, because they are built to win now, that if they need to go out and find somebody else, they'll spend some money to add to that roster if they need to. The A's, you're always right. That seems like the A's always do just enough to win. My concern about the A's, and this is real inside baseball right now, folks, but it is going to affect, I think, the wagering standpoint on it right now. The A's back room is in turmoil. They have been trying to get a stadium built forever, and it looked like everything was proceeding just fine. They were going to get a waterfront stadium. Everything was going to be cool. Everything was going to be great. They were going to stay in Oakland, and the whole thing is blown apart. And right now, there is grave questions on whether the Oakland A's will be the Oakland A's within the next 24 months. And if it appears that they can't get that stadium built, they have no other options. They really don't, because they don't want to build where the Coliseum is right now. And if they are going to move, they will blow this team up, because they won't take all these guys with them. So be very careful on laying much money. Now, I would put a little money down, but don't throw a ton of money at the A's, because what's happening business-wise could be such that they would wind up at the trade deadline blowing this team apart if they don't think they can get the stadium built, because they won't take this roster with them if they're going to move.
Real quickly before we get to picks here, I still can't figure out who has the best pitching staff in this division. Bullpen-wise, the A's always seem to have a good bullpen that throws 7 or 8 arms out there. Houston had a good stretch toward the end of the season. Valdez was one of the guys. The Angels, I know they signed a couple of guys. The Angels signed a couple of guys there. We'll get to all the previews. Poor Dave Sims. I hope the Mariners do well. Speaking of the Mariners starting off well, they're like that horse, and all of a sudden the horse goes lame around the third, and then you have to shoot the horse. And that's usually what happens to Seattle by the All-Star break. They get shot, and then you wonder where the hell they were in the second half of the season. And then you find out they're 60 and 102 when they started off 18 and 9. I'm going like, how bad could that be? And then the Texas Rangers, of course, we know what they're doing. And don't minimize the loss of Liam Hendricks out of that A's bullpen going to the White Sox right now. They're still looking for a closer there as well, too. So we'll have a lot of baseball to talk about as we get towards April 1st. Probably the same week of the Final Four, the Elite Eight week. We'll have a lot of baseball. Spring training will be down towards the end. We'll see all the signings and all the nonsense that goes on with Major League Baseball. All right, let's get to picks here as we get down to it. I'll start with Casey today. Casey had a good day yesterday, I think. So if I remember right, Casey's picks, 1-1 yesterday, Colorado State and Hawaii. Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, sorry, guys. I really thought Boomer Sooner was due for a rebound yesterday. I took them minus the 2. They did have a 1-point lead in the second half, but Vasu was right on Texas. Hey, I'll take it. I'm still doing pretty darn well. 14-2 in my last 16, and let's see if we can't get back on track. Now, the lines are so fresh for tomorrow that I didn't really handicap that. Maybe I'll send some to Vasu, and we'll post it on our Make the Money and Run page tomorrow. So I'm not going to dabble in Saturday hoops like I normally do. I did find 2 games of intrigue today that I'll be playing. Colorado State finds himself in a unique position. They are not a team that is a stalwart as far as going to March Madness. They've got themselves in a great position here near the top of the Mountain West Conference. They are playing, I believe they're locked into the 3 seed when the tournament starts behind Boise and San Diego State. But I think that the Mountain West is a 3-bid league this year. Problem is they got to travel to Lawler Center where it's very difficult to win, as even in a down year, Nevada, I believe, has won 10 of 12 at home. But I'm going to play around and tinker with the first half. It worked for me last night with the Blazers -2.5 by that much over the Kings. They had a 3-point lead. Let's move to the first half and take those Colorado State Rams plus a half point at Reno. I think that Reno may end up winning this game, but I think that the Rams are going to come out tough and looking like a team that only has 3 losses in that conference, a conference we'll talk about more next week. And let's bring it back to my home area. This is a hometown populated pick. UC Davis just down the road from where I live, and they are on a 3-game under streak. They're playing the Hawaii Warriors, who they'll be playing not only tonight, but again this weekend. It's another one of those double dips to conclude the Big West regular season. Hawaii's on a 2-1 under. Looking at Davis's play, sorry, I dropped out for a moment. They are a team that they're okay, but they're much better at home, and they score a lot more at home. Hawaii's kind of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde as far as their scoring margins, but both teams are very capable of playing this one in the 70s. The total's at 140, so I'm going to ride the over. I think this one finishes somewhere around 76-72 in a competitive game. So over 140 for UC Davis, Hawaii, and Colorado State, plus a half point in the first half at Reno, Chuck.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Okay, well, I didn't put up my totals from yesterday because I wanted to brag about it because I was perfect yesterday. I was 0 for 4. I played all overs, unders yesterday, and I just got nothing but burn, ladies and gentlemen. But we are the honest show, so I'm going to tell you that. It was just painful. Every time I kept looking, I'm going, I got burned again. I can't believe it. So, you just, you do what you have to do. But I already have made one pick on a game that was already in progress, and that was the Dayton VCU game. And I picked VCU on the money line -150, and I can update you right now with 2:05 left to go in the second half. VCU was up 67-58, so I'm looking good on that. So I may finally get into the win total here. And then moving on in the MAC tournament, I've got Eastern Michigan versus Western Michigan, and I've got EMU there +2. Very interesting. This is the first time those two teams have met this season. And you ask yourself, well, how can that be? Shouldn't they have met already? And because of the whole COVID thing and everything else, these two teams have not seen each other yet this season. So that'll be a kind of an interesting thing there. Almost identical records. And I just kind of went through and picked some stats there and went with that. And I kind of like to play with the MAC anyway. And then finally, I was sucked in like a moth to the flame. My Eastern Kentucky Colonels, who have helped me out throughout the year. They're playing Morehouse in their tournament. It's on a neutral court. Morehouse beat them in their one outing earlier in the season by 3 points. But it's on and that was at Morehouse, but this is on a neutral court. And so I'm going to take Eastern Kentucky +1.5 in that game.
All right. That's Nevada Party, Casey Freelove, Charlie O, the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, March 5th, 2021. We'll be back on Monday, 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific. We'll have all the conference basketball set up, conference tournament basketball set up for next week. A little football news as well coming up. Ben Roethlisberger signed a 1-year contract with Pittsburgh to come back, and the Washington football team released Alex Smith as well too. But we'll have more NFL. But for the next 2.5 weeks, boys, it's going to be nothing but college basketball mixed in with a little NBA. So we thank everybody on Facebook for watching us as well. If you missed any of it, you can download and subscribe on Apple and Spotify and iHeart or anywhere you get your podcast, or subscribe to your podcast as well. Send us comments on Facebook Live. We're on the Stables Media YouTube page, Stables Media Facebook page, as well as our individual Facebook pages on top of that as well. All right, for Charlie O and Casey Freelove, I'm Vasi Vadaparty. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for Friday, March 5th, 2021. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the college basketball, the NBA basketball, the All-Star game, and We'll see you on Monday at 4:15, and we'll go from there. All right. Have a good afternoon. Have a good weekend, and as always, good luck.